Welcome to AI Security Ops, the weekly show where we cut through the hype and dig into how AI is being weaponized and how we can defend against it. This week we're going to talk about different databases and resources that you can use to find out about vulnerabilities in the artificial intelligence space. This is a rapidly evolving area, so please don't fault us if next week things are totally different. This episode is brought to you by Black Hills Information Security and Anti-Siphon Training. BHIS helps organizations find real-world security gaps before attackers do. We do this through penetration testing, adversarial emulation, and purple team work, where red teams and blue teams get together and figure things out. Anti-Siphon delivers hands-on, practitioner-led training built around real-world attacks and real tools, so you can use what you learn immediately. To find out more, you go to blackhillsinfosec.com or antisiphonttraining.com. All right, so this week we've got all this interesting stuff about different vulnerability databases and reference sites. Anyone want to start this off?
Sure.
Yeah.
So
go ahead, Brian.
I'm going to go for it. So we've got, I think we've got a couple different frameworks and as mentioned, a couple different databases. And just to mention up front, although AI vulnerability tracking does exist today, it's still not quite as mature as the traditional CVE-based vulnerability tracking that we've been used to over the years. And we still haven't landed on like a single CVE kind of tracking system, nor have we really landed on like a single framework that we can apply. But with that said, there are some contenders that are starting to hit to the forefront, with some of these being some familiar names that you'll probably recognize. And the first one we'll kick off with is the MITRE ATLAS framework, which is brought to you by the same people who brought you the MITRE ATT&CK framework, ATLAS being Adversarial Threat Landscape for AI Systems. And it's basically the idea of what you would expect from like the ATT&CK framework, but more geared towards kind of like AI space in particular.
The thing that kind of struck me, we're going to talk about four of them. So we have Atlas, we have the AI incident database, the AI vulnerability database, and then the OWASP top 10. And the thing that kind of struck me about it is like that as we were putting some of this stuff together was that, AI is still special. It's getting its own thing. But at some point, does it just become part of like the regular vulnerabilities or just part of like what we consider to be normal? Because right now it's unique and novel and special. So was virtualization when it first came out, or containerization, or the cloud, or anything. And then did they get their own vulnerability database? I don't even remember, but I don't recall that. And then there was a really serious N8N vulnerability last week that is now fixed, to the props of the folks at N8N, where there was essentially a remote code execution. Was that an AI vulnerability or just a standard CVE, or probably just a standard CVE? But anyway, to Brian's point, all of this stuff is kind of muddled together. But I think as cybersecurity folks, you should definitely care, because the world is changing and evolving, and staying on top of this stuff is kind of important.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I honestly, on the point of having it separated out, I mean, really, I think that, especially with like Atlas, I think that we can probably just absorb that into the traditional ATT&CK framework. I think a lot of this is just that, AI had such like a quick ramp up in terms of hype cycle and adoption. And so I think immediately people were thinking like, oh, hey, like this is something special. We need all these separate vulnerabilities and tracking mechanisms for this. But I feel like as we're getting more and more into this and more comfortable in the space as a whole, we're seeing that it's not really like a whole separate entity, it's tightly integrated with all the things that all the issues that we have seen before. And so, you mentioned cloud stuff. I mean, that doesn't have its own MITRE framework. I mean, that is integrated. You go and you look in MITRE attack, and it's just integrated in the different sections that are already there in terms of initial compromise and persistence and all the other facets that we're also used to. And honestly, I mean, I think that at some point we might just see Atlas being merged within the original attack framework. And honestly, I think that would make perfect sense.
Yeah, well, for those that, sorry, go ahead, Ron.
Well, I completely agree with you. And I think that this is actually part of a natural evolution. Like you said, we saw it with virtual spaces. We saw it with cloud. Now we're seeing it with AI. And
it's blockchain. Don't forget blockchain.
Oh, God. Well, it's not only that, hey, this is new and shiny and it's different, but then it's also, as it becomes more mainstream and becomes more universally implemented. I mean, I remember when cloud was new and novel and not the norm. And then it made sense to have these separate places to go to find out about how it works and what the vulnerabilities are in that. And I think that we're going to see that exact same evolution with the AI space.
Mm-hmm. Well, that said, I do like MITRE. I mean, I like all four of these, actually. I mean, I'm not being critical of the data that they have there. I think it's very useful. And I have a love-hate relationship with the kill chain kind of methodology, because it's useful for framing how a threat actor thinks about getting into a system. However, it is kind of outdated at the moment when you think of how the Lockheed Martin kill chain works. It's talking specifically about compromising an internal resource. So that kind of, flavored what MITRE attack then looked like, where you had reconnaissance and weaponization and exploitation all the way through to actions on objectives. And, that's kind of how MITRE Atlas was then, is now organized as well, and which is well and good, but I think that threat actors and attackers have kind of moved on a little bit from that kind of traditional kind of take on breaking into a computing system. But then if you go and look, there's some real good information out there on how threat actors are actually using AI to accomplish their tasks.
One of the other things that I like about seeing that there's more than one of these vulnerability databases and resources is that each one brings their own spin. So MITRE has its way of framing things. OWASP has its way of framing things. And each has value, especially because people work in different ways. You have different headspaces, different learning styles, and different perspectives. And I think that just as OWASP is good for pretty much anything web related, they're absolutely a leader in terms of that. Not the only resource that you should use by any means, but they've declared themselves in that space and established a good reputation for good reason. Because so many of these AI tools are implemented in a web-based format using API calls and forms and chatbots and all of those things, we're seeing a lot of the same culprits. So I can see them being able to bring a lot to bear. Same thing with MITRE. This Avid database, I think, is completely new, however. But what I've seen in looking at their website and how they're writing things up, they're doing a good job. They're treating it responsibly, and that's always nice to see.
Yeah, I think that each one of them has a slightly different intended use case, right? And I think that MITRE is probably kind of more for threat modeling, red teaming, defense planning kind of stuff. And then the AI incident database, case analysis. I like risk justification. Are we really need to do this because, and give me some money, right? And policy kind of things. Where the AI vulnerability database, security assessments and standards for pen testers and compliance teams kind of thing. And then, like you said, OWASP is, development and secure development lifecycle. Like, don't, make it secure from the beginning, which, as we have seen in the real world, there's probably some good use case for that.
Maybe just a little bit.
So I'm looking at, I wasn't super familiar with AI incident database and AI vulnerability database before this. So it sounds like AI incident database is, literally what the name says, they are tracking incidents, like actual incidents that occur, not necessarily new vulnerabilities, but it's being crowdsourced out that, hey, this incident occurred on this company, just as a heads up. Versus AI vulnerability database is more of trying to aim towards like that traditional like CVE style tracking of that it's a specific vulnerability that could have been exploited across multiple incidents that we have seen. Is that kind of your guys' takeaway on that one too?
Yes. Did you take a look at their news digest? The interface is very interesting. Do we have a way to screen share on this?
Yeah, it'll let you screen share. I think we should off-road and do the screen share. Just make sure you close your email first.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right.
But yes, you can screen share as far as I'm aware. But yeah, I kind of like the, as someone who used to do incident response for a living, I like reading about other people's misfortunes apparently. And I do like the AI incident database. And the first one I saw on the incident roundup for the end of last year, I guess actually the Q3 of last year, trending, deep fakes and the monetization of attention. And, I think that, 2026, the second biggest, AI vulnerability that we're going to see, and tune in next week for what we think might be the first, is going to be the use of deep fakes and pretending to be the CEO or something like that. And in fact, our continuous pen test group at Black Hills had a customer ask them to create a deep fake of their CEO as like a training kind of thing. And, I was only loosely involved, but it went pretty well in my opinion. But, it was a scary time.
The best of times, the worst of times.
Yeah, it's always like that, I think.
So, I did share the, AI incident database a little bit and clicked on a couple of things. It's an interesting site, and I like how Grok is at the top of all of the current news.
Yeah.
I haven't really been paying attention.
Reasons as usual.
Did they have a vulnerability? I haven't really been paying attention.
Oh, go ahead, Bronwyn.
No, by all means.
Yeah, some of the I just caught a snippet of it on one of the news updates yesterday. It sounds like people are using it for certain things that other people aren't very happy about. We'll say they aren't happy about the guardrails related to deep fakes, but let's say for more personal use.
It has to do with non-consensual alterations of images. And
so people posting like an image of themselves and then someone taking that image with Grok like inline in the chat app and doing so did they inappropriate things. Well, it's kind of funny. Like I use Instagram and X a little bit, right? On Instagram, certainly they try and, the algorithm knows that, I'm a middle-aged male, right? So it tries to sell me things with, scantily clad women, but it never goes past that, like I don't ever see anything, not safe for work on Instagram. That is not the case on X. Definitely. But my algorithm on X is all like AI and machine learning and information security. And I don't really go to the algorithm as much as like the For You one, but definitely, Instagram is more like music and jujitsu and stuff like that. And I try and actually keep them separate, like to see how the algorithms like behave. But that's kind of hard, but I guess that makes sense because, it seemed like that it wouldn't be too terribly difficult for them to put like guardrails on the inline Grok, like Grok do this kind of thing.
Yeah. But
and that's what the argument and outrage is kind of about. And Elon has basically made it into like a free speech battle. of basically like, you can't tell me what to do. So,
Well, there's certainly
know.
some work. There are some countries now that are trying. I did catch earlier this week that I guess they were trying to get X to do. Are they suing him or something, or suing X? I guess for something along.
I think one country actually blocked X completely because.
Oh yeah, okay. Or they're threatening to do it or something.
Yeah.
You know, I applaud him for the free speech thing. I mean, I guess to a certain extent, you know, I think there should be a forum where people can say what they want. Now, I don't know that extends to taking a picture of me and doing inappropriate things. That seems to kind of go down that road. But and no one's going to take a picture of me and do inappropriate things. That's just weird. But I mean, it would be kind of fun to see what would happen if you put like some kind of prompt injection in there, or, you know, like a little Bobby Tables kind of thing. But I mean, like, at the end of the day, like, I mean, you don't have to use X, right? You could use another platform or just not put the pictures there, I guess. But
yeah, well, I think part of it, and sorry for us to off-road and dive too deep, but I think it's not just like people posting pictures on there. I think it's people getting stuff from other sources and then feeding it into their algorithm to get what they want out of it. But that's a whole nother debate, and I can see arguments from both sides, and that's a whole other thing.
To tie it back into what we were talking about, do you consider that a vulnerability? I mean, it kind of is, right? Like, if I can misuse your system for unintended consequences or unintended, like, you know, features. Cause I actually remember, maybe it's on, maybe one of the incident databases of, a story where, API keys got stolen and people were using, I think it was Foundry, to create some inappropriate content on someone's AI bill using, you know, unguardrailed models running in Foundry. But, oh man, what a weird world we live in now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and it's funny because I remember all of the promise of we'd have lunar colonies and space stations and flying cars, and we don't have any of those things. Well, we sort of have a space station, but we definitely don't have most of that. But now we do have machines that we can talk to every bit as much as HAL, the HAL 9000 in 2001.
And I still think that we do live in the future, because I can watch the AFC Championship game riding the train back from DC and not really even miss a beat. And that's pretty cool, right? That I'm able with that kind of technology. And so I think people take it for granted. Like, my daughter was lamenting that she has to write an essay and she only got an hour in class to like do the research, and that wasn't enough time. And I remember, I didn't say it, but I was thinking, you know, I used to have to go to the library and go do the research, and now you can just do this and the research shows up. So hush your mouth.
So the vulnerabilities are going to continue to expand. We know this, but still a lot of the vulnerabilities we've seen so far, and that I know I expect to see in the future, are variations on the same usual suspects. And so I applaud the fact that these separate AI vulnerability resources and databases exist. And I agree that eventually they'll be folded into the other ones, although some of them may stay separate. You know, who knows?
All right. Well, should we wrap it up?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Thank you for joining us, everybody, and we'll see you around. Keep on prompting.